Have you ever just stopped and wondered if there's some kind of hidden pattern? A single thread connecting all of human experience? I mean, something that could explain everything from why you fall in love to the power struggles you see in the news? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty bold new idea that tries to do exactly that.
It really does sound like the start of a strange joke, doesn't it? Love, power, personality, they feel like they belong in totally different buckets. One's about your heart, one's about influence, and the other is, well, it's you. But what if they're not separate at all? What if they're all just different flavors of the same fundamental force?
So this is where a framework called continuity theory steps in. It makes this radical proposal that all human relationships, and that means the ones inside our own heads, between us and another person, or even across whole societies, they all play by the same set of rules, a kind of physics of balance, tension, and flow. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle that big central question. Then we'll get into the core idea of flow. After that, we'll see how it actually applies to our relationships and even our own personalities. And finally, we'll look at how we might use this whole idea to find a little more balance in our lives.
All right, let's just jump right in with that huge question. Is it even possible? Can you really boil down the beautiful, messy complexity of human life into a single equation? It sounds almost crazy, but this theory argues it's the absolute key to understanding who we are.
To really get how this could work, we have to look under the hood, at the engine that makes this whole theory run. It's actually a pretty simple toolkit with just a few core ideas that, when you put them together, can explain some incredibly complex stuff. So let's start with the basics.
At its absolute core, this is it, continuity theory. The best way to think about it is like a law of physics, but for human interaction. It's saying everything is always in motion, always flowing around some natural center of gravity, a point of perfect balance. But the big question is, what kicks that flow off in the first place?
Well, it all begins right here, with balance. The theory calls this a state of essence. Picture a perfectly still, calm pool of water. That's our baseline, our natural state of homeostasis, where there's no tension, no need for anything to change. But let's be real, life is almost never perfectly still, is it? The second we move away from that perfect balance, maybe we feel a desire for something we don't have, or realize there's a gap in our knowledge, a potential difference is created. Now, this isn't a bad thing, not at all. This is the spark. It's the tension that fuels literally all action, all thought, all feeling. And that potential, that tension, immediately drives a flow. This is just the system's natural, automatic attempt to get back to that calm, balanced state. So if the potential is a lack of knowledge, the flow is the act of learning. If the potential is feeling lonely, the flow is reaching out to a friend. Makes sense, right?
But of course, that flow is never a perfectly straight, easy path because there's almost always some kind of resistance in the way. And this can be anything. It could be the physical distance between you and a loved one, or it could be your own ego, your fear of being rejected, or even just the bureaucratic red tape inside a big company.
And when you put all those pieces together, you get this, the continuity equation. Now, I know it looks a little intimidating, but we literally just walked through all the parts. The flow, that psi, is driven by the potential difference, delta sigma, and it's slowed down by resistance, or R. The only new piece here is intentionality, which kind of acts like a turbocharger. A strong intention to learn or connect helps you push through resistance and gets the flow moving faster.
Okay, so we've got the toolkit. We understand the basic parts of the equation. Now, let's put it to the test. How on earth can this one idea explain something as deep and complex as our relationships? Well, let's start with two of the most powerful emotions we can feel.
Now this is where it gets really cool. Look at how the theory thinks about love and hate. They're not two separate forces. They're just the same flow going in opposite directions. Love is when there's a positive potential. You see something incredibly valuable in another person, so all your energy and attention flows towards them to get closer. Hate is just the opposite. It's a negative potential. You see a threat, so your energy flows away from them to create distance. Same physics, just a flipped polarity. And what's really wild is how this whole model scales up from just two people to entire societies. So take a classroom. The potential difference is the gap in knowledge between the teacher and the student. The resistance might be how difficult the subject is. And the flow, well, that's learning itself. And you can see how the exact same logic works for governments and their citizens, or even artists and their audiences. It's always a system of potential, resistance, and flow. Okay, so this framework seems to have some legs when it comes to our external relationships, but what about our internal world? Can it really get to the heart of something as intimate as our personality? Well, the theory says yes, and it all comes down to the balance between two different kinds of needs.
So check this out. According to this model, your personality is basically shaped by a ratio. How well are your advanced needs being met? We're talking creativity, purpose, self-expression, compared to how well your basic physical needs are met. If you're mostly worried about survival, you're going to be more pragmatic, maybe a bit anxious. When those two are in balance, you tend to be more emotionally stable and creative. And if your advanced needs are way more satisfied than your basic ones, you might lean more idealistic, maybe even a little disconnected from day-to-day reality.
So if our entire lives are this constant dance of flow and resistance around a central point of balance, is there a way for us to become better dancers? A way to consciously nudge things back toward equilibrium? The theory suggests that practices like meditation are basically real-world experiments in doing exactly that. Let's just look at meditation using our equation for a second. What's actually going on? Well, first, you're reducing resistance. You're lowering stress hormones. You're telling your ego to take a backseat for a bit. Second, you're cranking up the conductivity, your intentionality, by focusing your attention. And what's the result? A stronger, more coherent flow. And this isn't just a metaphor. Neuroscientists can actually see this as more synchronized brain activity. You are literally, actively tuning the variables of your own internal system.
And that really brings us right back to the central, powerful claim of this whole theory, which is summed up perfectly here. From the quiet conversations you have with yourself to the giant movements of history, it could all be part of one single continuous system, all of it governed by these universal rules of balance, potential, and resistance.
I mean, that is a massive idea, right? To think that the exact same dynamic could be at play in our most private thoughts and in our most complex social structures. It really leaves you with a powerful question to chew on. Could one simple principle of balance actually be the key that unites our inner and outer worlds? What do you think?